Hello and welcome back to another Campaign Diaries. So in the previous installment, the players cleared out the central headquarters of the group of cultists they've been trying to stop. And they didn't really interrogate people and the person they tied up and left outside. They just asked a few short questions, then killed him. And then on the way back to Lundy, where they first discovered these cultists, they came across two things. One, they came across the thought, oh wait, we don't really know where to go. We know 3 other cities where apparently the cult has installed itself or infiltrated into, but we don't know anything else. So they decided to go question the first cultist they captured again, which was now in prison. And they also came across a woman, a salesman of rare magical wares that were a little bit strange. She was selling a candle that can only be lit during the day or when it's daylight, which is not incredibly useful. A set of 2 gaming dice, one black, one white, and the white will always roll lower or the same as the black die. So you could, for instance, secretly hide the white die and make sure that it is that the 6 is pointing up, then roll the black die, and it will always guarantee roll a 6, and the players can have some control over that. And the players were quite interested in that. And there was also a little bag of sand, and if you pour out the sand, close the bag, open it again, there's more sand, and the sand you have poured out has vanished. So somewhat strange items. But yeah, they traded a little bit. They bought the game dice, and then they said, hey, are you interested in this scroll of darkness? And the merchant took the scroll, she read it out loud, and magical darkness engulfed them, and they heard footsteps running away as well as screaming. So they stepped out of the magical darkness, and they had found, and they were prepared to attack her because they were not going to let that stand. But instead they found her dead, and I described it as all of her veins having appeared burned, so there was like this very strange almost lightning pattern all over her arms where her veins had been. And I left it in the middle for my players if the scroll was cursed or if the merchant simply didn't have a high enough magic skill. Magic skills, that's the thing. A magic skill to properly cast the spell without being harmed in the process. They thought the scroll was cursed, but fair enough. So they just took all her belongings, all of her gold, a bar of soap, which they didn't possess previously, smelly adventurers, as well as the strange candle and the little bag of sand, because they'd already bought the dice. So they were back on their way to Lundy, and now there was one problem. In a previous during a previous gaming session, they had already told to the cultist, who is now in prison, I'm just going to call him by his name, Varnius. They'd already told Varnius that they're not going to torture him. But now they want to extract very precious information from him. That is basically secret information. You know, who are these secret infiltrators who have infiltrated in high society? Because some of the cultists have done that. So they came up with a plan, because one of the players has never been seen by Varnius, and they still have a bunch of Undian necklaces. So they came up with an elaborate ruse. They were going to, after a lot of discussing, they were going to dress up this player that Varnius had never seen before, or I suppose her character. They were going to dress her up in guards' clothing and give her one of these necklaces. Then the guards get to play out, you know, them going to the tavern and them putting the new lady as the guard for the prisons. And then this character walked up to Varnius and discreetly showed him her necklace and said, hey, I'm one of you. Could you give me some information? I'm supposed to go to these and these cities and I don't know what to do. And Varnius was overjoyed. The character played it off really, really well. And they basically just exchanged some information. And then they learned that there is Lord Enthir in the human city called the Red Mountain, who is a nobleman infiltrated in the group of friends of the local regent, well, I suppose the king. It's a local region, but yeah, the king. And that he possessed one of the sword pieces, possibly, hopefully. So, off to the Red Mountain they went. They didn't ask any more questions. They didn't ask for the other nobles in the other cities or the other infiltrators. They just had this bit of information. And they went on their way to the Red Mountain. They walked up to the palace. The guards let them in, begrudgingly. And they said, hey, we want to have an audience with Lord Enthier. And the guards were like, who are you? We don't know you. We're going to fetch Lord Enthier and we're going to see if you really are friends. And Lord Enthier came along and he recognized the necklaces they were wearing and he greeted them very friendly in front of the guards. Then he led them to his chamber. So now it was the party, Lord Enthier in his room. And that is when they realized, oh shit, we haven't discussed a plan. They have no idea what to do. They can't really discuss well, I suppose they could physically discuss at the gaming table what they're going to say. But I'm not going to wasn't going to let them do that because I thought, no, you could come up with a good lie, but that would require coordinated exchanging of information between your characters, and that is exactly what you cannot do in this situation. They were all still wearing the necklaces of Undia, and they basically kept playing that they were indeed cultists and that they were ordered by Rovald himself, who they killed, to gather up all of the sword fragments, if people already have them, so that they are in one place and the plan could be accelerated. And they talked a little bit. Oh, right, yeah. Lord Enthier, he poured them a glass of wine, and they did not trust that at all because they thought, oh, Enthier might be onto us. So they had the fighter, who is apparently very good with his alcohol, take a sip, and I basically calmed them down by saying it's incredibly strong, incredibly potent, and one of the strongest wines you've ever tasted. But it's just that, a fine wine. And I could see them feeling a wave of relief coming over them. But yeah, he walked out of the room and gathered. Well, he put a piece of cloth on the table, and inside the piece of cloth was the handle of the sword. They know what the sword looks like because they've seen a drawing of it. So they now have the sort of tip of the blade, which is attached to a stick to make a glaive, and they have the handle. And they gathered some more information about who the quote-unquote next person to interrogate is. It is someone in the capital city of the dwarves, Grialur, and the name is Chassephone. At that point, my players were wondering, why do they have such complicated names? Why don't you just call them Bob or Fritz? And I might just do that, but they might not like that either. We'll see. But yeah, so now they have another name, and off they went, and now they actually discussed their plans on the way there, to just basically keep up the ruse that they are cultists, and that they are on the lookout for sword fragments, and also on the lookout for possible traitors, because there had been whispers on the wind of that, according to Enthier himself. They stopped in a large merchant's city and asked for some information about this Chassephone. And they gathered some information, and with that information they went straight to the Grey Halls, or Grialur as they pronounce it in the native dwarven language. This is all backstory I come up with, sorry. And they started looking for this Chassephone. They learned about him that he went on an expedition. He needed some miners, a small group of mercenaries, and when he came back from the expedition, he had lost his arm. After some searching, they found his house. They knocked on the door. Chassephone opened, and they revealed their necklaces of Undia. And Chassephone blinded them with a burst of light, which he can do because he's a follower of Undia, and he sprinted off. And then a small chase scene happened, and I used a mechanic from 4th edition called skill challenges. Basically, all of the players had to use their skills, for instance, intimidation, to shout to the crowd, "Move aside!" so that they can catch the escaped person more easily, or just an acrobatics check to see how well they can shimmy past people in a speedy way. But yeah, after the skill challenge, they captured Chasafone. They brought him back to his home, sort of tied him to a chair, and he said, "Okay, now you're going to talk." And the fact that Chasafone ran away is not because he realized that the party members were not actually followers of Undia. He thought they were followers of Undia, but he had failed his mission, and he was afraid that he was going to get punished. But my players, they were really good at this. They were like, no, Undia will forgive you in the end. You've been loyal, you've been a hard worker, but why are you so afraid? Why did you give up your mission? And the answer is, they entered the crypt where they suppose a piece of the sword is hidden. And basically there was a large lake, and there was a huge sea serpent or water serpent. Its body enormous, its head the size of a hay wagon, and basically all of the crew got eaten or killed, and he was just able to escape with his life because of his cowardice, but he did lose his arm in the process. And the players asked for the location of this crypt, and Chasafone gave it to them, and then they went on their way. And that is where the campaign stopped for the moment. What I did forget to mention, and I'm really annoyed that I forgot to mention this, because I had written all of these things out on paper, so I have a linear structure where I'm going to tell, okay, first I'm going to tell this, then I'm going to tell this, then I'm going to tell you this, and I'd still forgotten something. On the way to Grialur, they realized, oh wait, the cult is actually looking for these sword pieces. We're just gathering up these sword pieces, so we might actually be constructing the sword for them and helping them, which is not what we want to do. So they cleverly hid one of the sword pieces in a location that they are aware of, and hopefully the cultists aren't. But yeah, that's in a nutshell all that happened during those many hours that we played. And next time they might come across this deadly sea serpent, they might not. It all depends on what they do, really. But yeah, thank you for listening or watching, and I'll see you next time.